Hi, this is Inside My Wallet. This is our fifth podcast. I'm Andrea Kennedy with Wiser Wealth, and this is Amanda Edwards with Tidy My Money. And today we're going to talk about habits. We've covered a lot in the first few podcasts, but the reason that habits are important is because we'll often realize that goals are not enough. And we did a bit of goal setting, but at the end of the day, a goal is just a stake in the ground. What we really need are to put kind of systems in place to get us to our goals. And within those, and all a system really is a bunch of habits and a bunch of small shifts along the way. I think a lot of people think when they try to reach goals that they're going to have big dramatic change. And if they do all the stuff in our podcast, they're going to have big dramatic change. And how actually people change isn't through a lot of big drama, but a lot of little tiny changes. And so before we talk about the money side, I want to kind of give an analogy to this. This is something that happened to me several years ago, kind of when I was a young mother. We had been living in a bunch of urban environments, and I realized I just wasn't kind of feeling as healthy as I normally did. And I realized I kind of hadn't been exercising the way I did when I was younger. And so I decided that I was going to run a 5K. And this was like a New Year's resolution of some kind, like we all make. We've all made these resolutions that kind of never work out. Because I had injured myself, I couldn't start running right away. So I ended up just walking, right? And I thought, okay, well, I'll just kind of walk 3 times a week and I'll get my body used to kind of hitting the pavement again. And so I would walk like a mile for a few times a week. And after a few times, of doing that, I kind of had the energy, and I walked for 2 miles. And so 1 mile became 2 miles over the series of a few weeks. This happened. And then my husband and I started to walk together, and then I started to walk with friends, and I stopped thinking about how many miles it was. And I was just walking, and it became, 1 hour became 2 hours, became, sometimes 2.5, 3 hours of walking. And this would be, several times a week. I can't even remember what I was doing in that time first, I might add. Before I was walking, I can't remember. This was mostly happening at night in Singapore, but it was like entire chunks of my time now were being devoted towards this walking. And after a few months, we started to take holidays differently. We started to, not focus so much on where are we going to go eat and drink and sit on a beach, but it was like, where can we go and do hiking? So walking became hiking, hiking became cross-country skiing. I never did the 5K is my point, but I became in this time much healthier. And in retrospect, if I had to unwind this whole experience, and now I'm still a very avid walker, and I think I cannot go a few days without walking because something feels wrong. But what I set as my goal put me in the right direction, and that was to run a 5K. That never happened, but all this walking did. And ultimately, if I had to rewind it, I would say, what I really wanted was to get healthier. So what does a healthy person do? What are the habits of a healthy person? They eat well, or they eat better than they're eating probably, at that point in time, and they start exercising regularly. That's really what healthy people do. It's not that much more complicated. And different people will do different things, but that's essentially how I became kind of by accident. I fell into a system that brought me to much, much healthier habits than I had, and it improved my health and well-being and, psychologically everything.
Because last episode, you talked about like, what does everyone, like goal setting, it's better to say that I want to be financially secure than I want to be wealthy, right?
Right. So the equivalent of this is, you can say, I want to save $1 million, and that might be a goal that you have to have or need to have or feel that you need to have. But at the end of the day, the question should be, why do you want that $1 million? Why do you want that investment in a house? Why do you want these things? And it's usually to be financially secure. So then you break that down and you have to ask yourself, what are the habits of somebody who's financially secure? What do financially secure people do? How do they act? How do they behave? What are the things they focus on, and what are the things they do not focus on? Yeah. So that will be absolutely living beneath your means, which is, going back to the cardboard. It is the very first thing that you're going to do is live within the amount that you make every month, and save, not just live within it, but to save. Don't live at it, save extra. Then you've got to apply that savings consistently to investments. And that is what brings you from stability to security. So financially secure people, they save money and they invest money, and they find a way to automate it. So this is done automatically. If you think of a mortgage payment, a lot of people have money built into real assets like homes because they're making a consistent payment every month.
Yeah.
In the US, we have 401ks. In Australia, they've got the superannuation account, right? These are systems where you're automatically having money deducted from your paycheck and put into a retirement fund, CPF in Singapore. So the goal really for everybody today is there a system that you have in your country or that you can get involved in, and or will you need to make a system for yourself in order to automate some of this savings and investment behavior?
Yeah. And then coming down to like a number, like people do like to have an actual number goal as well. I mean, some people are going, I'm not great with my money. I do want to look at it. Yes, I probably should automate savings, but I kind of don't know what's my starting point as a goal to aim for. And I mean, we always talk about 25 times your annual expenses. If people have
Right.
looked at their cash flow and what's their annual expenses, then the aim, a nice goal to start with, and people can of course do more than that, or they, it might seem very big if they're in debt at the moment or they're not doing very well. But 25 times their annual expenses is a, good number to then start to say, how do I save towards that every month? Because you really think that savings isn't just going, oh, I'll have my expenses and then I'm left with 2% and I put it there. You encourage it to be the other way, right? I save absolutely this.
Right from the get-go. So out of every paycheck, you commit to saving a certain amount, and it doesn't just go into a savings account. Ideally, that's being put towards investments, right? And everyone's gonna have different investments and opportunities to invest in different things, but that money automatically comes out. And if you look at some of the wealthier countries in the world, all of them have these systems built in because they know, the governments know, that this is how you build wealth over a long time. And it almost feels like they're confiscating the money, if you will, into a 401k or into a CPF account or a superannuation. But this is how people build wealth over a long time. It gets to the point where they're not thinking about it. It just automatically comes out of their paycheck and it's immediately being put towards some long-term investment.
Yeah.
So that is really how governments have automated it for us. And I think that the issue is if you don't have a system that allows you to automate it, how do you go about doing it? So I'm not sure what you've shared with your clients, but what is some of the advice that you would recommend?
I mean, I kind of break down expenses as well into, the necessary expenses that you have, which you can't avoid, like your living expenses. But there is definitely like would likes, there is a big element of I like to have these things. They're not necessary. And I kind of do focus people back to going, you have your, costs that you have to have. And then you have things that you like to spend on. If your savings and your goal is not being met, then you have to go to your I like these things.
Like to things, yeah.
And start like cutting there first. And
so these are kind of what we call must-haves or nice to haves, right?
Nice to haves,
cutting out the nice to haves.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed a lot of nice to haves now are subscription driven things. So a lot of this money, and this is how companies are making money off of us, they're automatically clawing a subscription out of us every month. And but it can be anything from dining out to I mean, I've seen all kinds of things that are nice to have, pet school, sending your dog to pet, training schools.
There's a lot of room. I feel like there's a lot of room for nice to haves in people's lives. And I also kind of say, like, if your savings goal gets met, like if you have saved 25 times your annual expenses, and actually, you've got way enough time ahead of you, time's gonna work for you with compound interest and everything else. You can go back to your nice to haves as much as you like, but you're coming from a much more secure place. You're coming from a place where you've built up your security, your stability and your security. And hopefully it will build some wealth. And you can do that, you can have all the things you want at that point, right? I mean, within reason. But you have to have done the hard work at the beginning going, what must I have? To be financially free, if the answer is to be financially free. So which
Right.
means that, you have 25 times your annual expenses that you are making sure makes, more than 4% for you, plus whatever inflation's doing, ideally, right? And you have that every year. And then working becomes, I'm working because I like to work, not that I have to work. You're free then. You're free to do whatever you want. And then I think, okay, if you've got those goals and that's the aim to get to, then after that you can relax a bit, and everything else. But that is a great goal to aim for. And then to look at the habits that you're talking about. I mean, I was at a point for me personally where, I was in a terrible place with money because of, family circumstances and everything else. And I definitely knew that I needed a change. And the goal was I wanted to feel financially secure. That was my goal at the time. And I realized that I wasn't spending enough time looking at the subject matter intelligently enough. Like I was not just spending even 2, 3, 4 hours a month looking at it. So I
you
just
probably
decided,
spent time panicking about it, but not necessarily investigating it. So,
like running up and down going, it's terrible. It's awful. I did a lot of that.
So what started this? I kind of call it shifting behavior. So why don't you explain how you shifted from panic to kind of focus?
I think it was taking up such an amount of emotional intelligence to panic about money.
And
Like
energy.
It was literally taking up, so it was such a dark cloud over my head that it was affecting everything. And I just went, what can I do about it? And I said, well, first is to look at it, is to get radically honest and look at it. And at that stage, I was in such a bad place that I was then looking at it every week. Like every week, I was looking at my money. And then as I kind of looked at it, I was like, well, that's ridiculous. That needs to be, I have to stop. It was then very evident I needed to control myself and that I needed to stop a lot of money going out, which I really couldn't afford for it to go out. And I had to just halt everything. So just the process, just the shift of looking at it, I was awake instantaneously to the facts. So and that shift then allowed me to build the habit of going, I have to stop spending money that I don't have, and I have to stop giving away money that I don't have, like spending it. And then I have to go, not forever, but I have to go, I can't go out for drinks. I can't go on holiday with you, girlfriends. I am not going to buy. I have a sufficient wardrobe. I don't need to add anything to it.
So this is a really important point. I think a lot of spending behavior that's nice to have actually is what I call spending to belong behavior. People are spending to do things with other people. And I think people should and can realize, much with my walking, I made a lot of friends walking too, was that you can do things with good friends will do things with you that don't involve money, particularly if you set boundaries and you say, listen, this is important to me. I need to do this for myself. And this is a bit talking to people with money, but also finding a support network. I think finding that support network who understands you want to shift your behavior is super important. So I have to ask, did you do this very much alone, or did you feel like you had some support around you at this time when you were really making these changes?
I think I got lucky, with the friends that I had, and that, I could say, no, I'm not going out for dinner. Can we do pizza and a beer, at home or something, and I didn't, I didn't have any resistance with the people around me. And I think I did get very lucky with that. But I think that, being honest with yourself first kind of gave me a confidence, which was that I am not going to feel depressed or bad or in this dark place when I have a chance to change and do something for me. Like I probably became a little bit selfish actually, because I was like, I've got one life and I don't want to suffer through it. I want to do something. And there were, in the initial shift, I felt like it was going to last forever. Like I
Right.
felt like I was going to have to police myself and say no and stay that way forever. And, and I kind of had to go, well, it might not be forever. Like if you get financially stable and then you start to build, and then I started to visualize, what if you have savings and no debt? And then I just slowly, like my goal wasn't even 25 times my expenses at that point. It was like no debt and save something.
Savings. Yeah.
And then when I got to that, like no debt and savings, then it was like, okay, now you can go and build. And I just took it like where I could manage, at the time, shift by shift, by shift.
And that's how really change happens. And as I'm sure you were shifting things around in your financial life, you also, I mean, you said selfish, but I think actually you set boundaries, and we do have to set boundaries, sometimes with ourselves, sometimes with other people, but this is how we actually, and it makes us stronger over time in a lot of ways. And I'm sure that strength has also kind of infected other parts, in the best sense of infection, infected other parts of your life.
Yes, it did, because I became definitely like, I don't want to waste money. I mean, we call it burning money in my family. If you waste it, it's like you burnt it, you set it on fire. There was no memory from it or no great thing. So you say burnt money. And I definitely became like, everything's got to count. We can spend it, but we got to know that we wanted that thing.
Right.
That it's giving us something. It became, the whole, just looking at it changes your perspective of it. And I'm sure like you in the walking and health, I mean, you just, your brain just changes bit by bit into that, that area that you're trying to go to.
And then you kind of start craving this other thing, which is healthy. So that's probably what happened. Instead of craving whatever it was before, you probably can't remember it. Like I said, I can't remember what I was doing with that time before. I think maybe for the homework that we can set out for people today is to look at something that they can either start or stop that is a healthy habit. And it does not need to be a big dramatic thing. A lot of people who make dramatic changes go back to, it's just like losing, 20 pounds and all of a sudden they've gained 30 pounds. So that's not what we're asking. We're asking people to look, you've done your balance sheet, you've done your cash flow, look at where you do have savings or where you can create savings, and how you can actually start putting a habit in place that gets you beyond where you are today, even if it's just a bit at a time. It doesn't have to be big money changes.
No, I mean, even looking at it, I honestly feel even looking at it as a habit, like I'm going to actually look at my money every month. And if you're in dire straits with it, every week, but like if at a minimum, I'm going to look at it every month, my cash flow, my balance sheet, I'm going to have a conversation around it. And that is for me anyway, it's a shift in the right mental direction.
Right. I think that's a shift for a lot of people. Actually, it's not, I think, just you. And I think from the investment piece, if the savings isn't the hard part of it, it's the investment part. It's how do you automate your savings every month to get it invested? And what can you get invested in that doesn't have a lot of fees attached to it and a lot of middlemen attached to it, so that you can consistently start investing your money, regardless of what's going on in financial markets or housing markets or wherever you're putting your money. What are the ways that you can automate that? So to find that would be the habit of how to automate would be kind of the clue here, how to automate that investment money every month.
And I think we're going to do, like, we'll do a whole podcast on that subject matter, I think. Yes. Yeah. I mean,
or it requires a podcast.
Or at least who can help you, and, your tips definitely on who are the people to find, to try not to find salesmen, to try and find people that are really there to help you.
But I would say just on the end of this, if this sounds daunting, like focusing on money the way that Amanda has described, or just putting away money every month the way I've described for investments, then it does help to sometimes hire someone in the same way that you would hire a trainer. If I really wanted to run a marathon, I probably would have had to find a trainer. Sometimes people do need people that can help them, as long as they're the right people. And that would be a certified, financial planner or something in this case. And those people can help, and they can coach you to do better by your money, if it's something that you need help with from the outside. But if you can just start small and make these changes and start this week, start today, start after we, shut this podcast down.
Yeah.
That would be the homework that we'd ask of our viewers this week.
Yeah, is to look at, if you've looked at your balance sheet, your cash flow, try to set a goal, and then try to set what are the habits towards getting you to that goal, or dropping something that is hindering you from getting to that goal, and yeah, that's a great homework, I think, for goal setting.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And we'll be back with episode 6. We're going to start talking about conversations around money and, how to, have some good ones with yourself and with family or partners. All right. Okay. Thanks so much.